The laughter cut through the thin glass of the living room window, sharp and condescending. I stood just out of sight, watching my brother, Mark, and his wife Jessica, gesturing towards the curb. They were pointing at my car. My 10-year-old, slightly dented, but perfectly reliable sedan. It was parked behind Mark's brand new metallic black SUV, the kind that costs more than a down payment on a small house. The contrast was stark, and they were savoring it. Seriously, can you believe he still drives that thing? Jessica's voice dripped with disdain. It's an embarrassment. What will the neighbors think seeing that rust bucket in our driveway? Our driveway. The possessiveness in her tone was like a needle prick to my soul. Mark chuckled, a low, rumbling sound full of smug satisfaction. I keep telling him, Liam, get a real car. It's a matter of image. But you know him. He's always been behind. He tapped the gleaming hood of his SUV. This is what success looks like, Jess. Not that piece of junk. They laughed again, a shared sound of superiority. They thought I was inside, helping my mother set the table for our mandatory Sunday dinner, oblivious to their mockery. They saw me as the family failure, the quiet, unassuming younger brother who never quite measured up, the one who worked a simple, boring job while Mark climbed the corporate ladder. They looked at my old car and saw my entire life summed up in a single, pathetic object. They were so focused on the peeling paint and the faded bumper sticker that they failed to see the truth. They were laughing at my old car, completely unaware that the very house they were standing in front of, the home they secretly signed over to themselves, was just days away from being repossessed. By me. You might be wondering how things got to this point. How a brother could be so cruel, and how I could be so cold as to take the family home from under his feet. The answer is simple. They taught me that love was conditional, and that family was a transaction, and I was about to show them they had made a very, very bad investment. To understand my reaction, or lack thereof, you have to understand the foundation our family was built on. From the very beginning, there was Mark, and then there was me. Mark was the investment. I was the insurance policy. He was the golden child, destined for greatness, his every whim catered to, his every mistake gently swept under the rug. I was the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who was expected to understand, to sacrifice, and to clean up the messes. When we were kids, if Mark broke a vase, I was lectured on not leaving it so close to the edge of the table. When he got a C on his report card, my parents hired a tutor. When I brought home straight A's, they'd nod and say, "Good. That's what you're supposed to do." I learned early on that praise was a currency I couldn't afford. My role was not to shine, but to ensure nothing dimmed Mark's light. This dynamic solidified around money as we got older. I got my first job at 15, bussing tables at a local diner. The money I earned went towards my school clothes, my field trips, and eventually, a savings account for college. Mark didn't work. He was told to focus on his studies, which mostly meant focusing on his social life. When he wanted the latest gaming console or a new pair of designer sneakers, he just had to ask. The first major betrayal happened when I was 17. I had saved nearly $3,000 for a down payment on a cheap car. One day, I went to the bank and found my account nearly empty. When I confronted my parents, my mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My father explained, in a calm, rational voice, that there had been a family emergency. Mark had gotten into some trouble with his friends on a ski trip and needed the money. "He's your brother, Liam," my father said, as if that explained everything. "We're a family. We help each other out." But I knew they hadn't taken the money from their own accounts. They had taken it from mine. It was easier. I was the one who wouldn't put up a fight. I was the one who would just quietly start over. And they were right. I did. But I never forgot. That day, I learned that in my family, "we" was just another word for Mark. College was more of the same. Mark went to a prestigious 4-year university out of state, his tuition and living expenses covered by a combination of my parents' savings and new loans they co-signed. I stayed home, attended community college, and worked nearly full-time to pay for my classes and books. I graduated with a degree in accounting, zero debt, and a deep understanding of how money actually works, not as a tool for status, but as a measure of security. Mark graduated with a business degree, a fiancée named Jessica, who was even more status-obsessed than he was, and a taste for a lifestyle he couldn't sustain. He got a decent job, but every penny went towards the illusion of wealth, the fancy apartment, the leased luxury cars, the expensive dinners. Meanwhile, I lived in a small apartment, drove my used car, and methodically built my savings. They saw it as me failing to launch. I saw it as building a foundation on solid rock while they built theirs on sand. The foundation cracked about 5 years ago. My father's company downsized, and he was forced into early retirement. Their savings were not what they should have been, thanks to years of funding Mark's lifestyle. Suddenly, the mortgage on the family home became an impossible burden. The bank sent a notice of default. That's when the family emergency call came again. This time, it was a summit at the house. My mother was crying. My father looked defeated. Mark and Jessica sat on the couch, looking deeply concerned, but in that performative way people do when they want to be seen as caring without actually offering any help. "We're just stretched so thin right now," Mark said, shaking his head gravely. "With our mortgage, the kids' future, we just don't have any liquidity." He said this while wearing a watch that cost more than my entire emergency fund at the time. Then, all eyes turned to me. The reliable one. The saver. "Liam," my father began, his voice heavy. "You've always been so careful, so responsible. We need your help. We can't lose this house." They weren't asking for a loan. They were asking me to take over their mortgage payments indefinitely. It was presented as my duty. I sat there for a long moment, the silence stretching out. I saw the whole pattern of my life laid out before me, the empty savings account, the endless expectations, the transactional nature of their love. And I made a decision. "I'll do it," I said calmly. "On one condition, you add my name to the deed, as a joint tenant with right of survivorship." There was a thick, uncomfortable silence in the room. Mark stared at me, his brow furrowed. "Why do you need to be on the deed, Liam?" he asked, his voice tight with suspicion. "Don't you trust your own family?" The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. My father shuffled his feet, but my mother, seeing the foreclosure notice on the coffee table, finally just nodded. Desperation was a powerful motivator. "If that's what it takes to save our home," she whispered, "then fine." So the deal was struck. I handled all the paperwork myself. I met with the bank, restructured the loan, and filed the new deed with the county clerk, making sure every I was dotted and every T was crossed. From that day forward, a significant portion of my paycheck went directly to a mortgage that wasn't mine for a house I didn't live in. For 5 years, I made every single payment on time, without fail. The total amount climbed past $100,000. To my family, this sacrifice became an expectation. It was just Liam's duty. They never said thank you, not once. During this time, Mark and Jessica's life only got grander, while mine remained simple. They took luxury vacations, bought a second car, and enrolled their kids in expensive private schools, all while I was subsidizing their inheritance. They were living a life built on my quiet, steady contributions. I continued to save, started a small but successful accounting firm on the side, and invested wisely. They remained completely oblivious, seeing only the old car and the small apartment, reinforcing their narrative of me as the unambitious brother. The second and final betrayal came after my father had a stroke. His health declined rapidly, and my mother, overwhelmed, struggled to care for him. Mark and Jessica seized the opportunity. They sold their house and moved into my parents' home, framing it as a noble act of sacrifice. They were going to be the live-in caregivers. I knew it was a power play. A few months later, I got a certified letter in the mail. It was a standard property tax notice, but it was addressed only to Mark and our parents. My name was missing. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I drove to the county records office the next day and pulled the file on the property. And there it was, a quitclaim deed filed 2 weeks prior. It transferred my entire interest in the property over to Mark. At the bottom of the document was my signature, a clear, blatant, and frankly, amateurish forgery. They had used our father's diminished capacity and our mother's distress to steal my half of the house, erasing the $100,000 I had paid as if it never existed. In that moment, holding the fraudulent document, I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound and chilling calm. They had finally shown their true colors, and I knew exactly what I had to do. I walked out of the county records office, the certified copy of the forgery feeling heavy in my briefcase. An angry man makes mistakes. A methodical man builds a case. I didn't go home. I went to my office. Under the bright, sterile lights, I locked the door, sat down at my desk, and began to work. For the next 3 days, I was an auditor of my own life. I pulled every bank statement from the last 5 years. I created a spreadsheet, logging every single mortgage payment I had made, complete with transaction IDs and dates. The final tally was 114 and 215.68. I printed it all, creating a thick file of irrefutable proof. This was my investment. But the forged deed wasn't just a theft of my investment, it was a crime, and I suspected it was just the tip of the iceberg. People this brazen are rarely careful. I hired a private investigator, a discreet professional I knew through a client. I didn't tell him the whole story. I simply said I needed a complete financial workup on Mark and Jessica. I wanted to know about their debts, their assets, their spending habits. I told him to be thorough. A week later, he delivered a file that made my blood run cold. Just as I suspected, the moment my name was off the deed, they had pounced. They had walked into a bank and taken out a massive $75,000 home equity line of credit, or HELOC. They had leveraged the equity that I had painstakingly preserved. The investigator's report was meticulous. It showed a $60,000 wire transfer to pay off their maxed-out credit cards and a personal loan. It showed a cashier's check for $15,000 made out to the luxury car dealership where Mark had bought his new SUV. They had bled the house dry to fund their lifestyle, all while claiming to be noble caregivers for our ailing parents. Holding that report, I finally saw the path forward. It wasn't about confronting them. It was about foreclosure. The original mortgage, the one I had been paying, was still the primary lien on the property. Their new HELOC was secondary. They had committed fraud to secure a loan against an asset they only partially owned, using my contributions as their collateral. So, I did the simplest thing in the world. After 5 years of perfect on-time payments, I stopped. I didn't call the bank, I didn't call my family, I just stopped paying. I knew the bank's automated system would soon start sending out letters, and those letters would no longer be addressed to me. They would be addressed to the new owners of record, Mark and my parents. The first domino was about to fall. For the next month, there was only silence. I continued with my life and my work, a quiet hum of activity, while I waited for the seeds I had planted to sprout. The first sign of trouble came, as I knew it would, in the form of a phone call from Mark. He didn't bother with a greeting. "Liam, the bank sent a late notice for the house. What the hell is going on? Did you forget to pay the mortgage?" His voice was a whip crack of accusation. The sheer entitlement of it was breathtaking. I let a moment of silence hang in the air before I responded, my voice deliberately neutral. "The mortgage? I'm not sure what you're talking about, Mark." "Don't play dumb with me," he snarled. "The payment is 30 days late. It's never been late before. What did you do?" I didn't do anything, I said calmly. Mark, I went to the records office a while back. I saw the quitclaim deed you filed, the one with my forged signature on it. Since my name is no longer on the property, I assumed you had taken over all related financial responsibilities. Why would I keep paying the mortgage on a house I don't own? The other end of the line went completely quiet. I had him. He couldn't admit he had forged the document, and he couldn't logically explain why I should keep paying. He just sputtered for a moment, a mix of rage and panic, before I delivered the final blow. It sounds like a problem for the homeowners to solve. You should probably call the bank. I hung up before he could respond. Next came the call from my mother, her voice trembling with manufactured hysteria, no doubt coached by Mark. Liam, how could you do this to us? After we trusted you? We're going to lose our home. The old me would have crumbled. The old me would have felt a surge of guilt and responsibility, but that Liam was gone, erased by a forged signature. Mom, I said, my voice firm but not unkind. For 5 years, I paid over $100,000 to keep that house afloat. Then Mark and you decided I was no longer an owner. Mark lives in that house now for free. He is the owner. He needs to pay the mortgage. This is between you, him, and the bank. The panic must have truly set in then. They were now on the hook for the primary mortgage and the payments on their secret HELOC. They were drowning. A week later, another call came. It was Jessica, her voice dripping with fake sugar. Liam, hi. We were just thinking. We haven't had a family dinner in ages. We'd love for you to come over on Sunday. Just a casual get-together. I knew instantly what it was. An ambush. They were going to corner me, the three of them against one, and try to emotionally blackmail me into submission. It was the perfect stage. I'd love to, I said. I'll be there. I arrived on Sunday and parked my car on the street, right where I knew they'd see it. As I walked up the driveway, a driveway I had paid for month after month, I felt a strange detachment. This wasn't a home anymore. It was an asset in dispute. The air inside was thick with a toxic sweetness. My mother fluttered around nervously. My father sat pale and silent in his armchair, and Mark and Jessica played the part of gracious hosts, offering me drinks and asking about my work with phony interest. We picked at the dry roast chicken dinner, the conversation strained and pointless. Finally, we moved to the living room. This was it. Mark cleared his throat, leaning forward with a look of feigned sincerity. Liam, we need to talk. We're all really worried about you. This business with the mortgage, it's just not like you to be so irresponsible. My mother immediately chimed in, her voice quavering. Your father's health is so fragile. The stress of this, the thought of being thrown out on the street. Liam, how could you be so cold? We are your family. I let them finish, absorbing their performance. When they were done, I calmly reached into my briefcase. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I simply placed a neatly bound document on the coffee table. This is a spreadsheet of every mortgage payment I have made on this house for the past 5 years, I said, my voice even. The total is $114,215.68. Let's call that my family contribution. Mark stared at it, speechless. I reached back into the briefcase and pulled out a second document, placing it next to the first. It was the certified copy of the quitclaim deed. And this is my reward, I continued. A forged document, created to steal my investment and erase me from the equation. My mother gasped. Mark's face went from pale to beet red. That's a lie. You can't prove that, he sputtered. Oh, but it gets worse, I said, my voice dropping to an icy calm. I pulled out the third file, the private investigator's report, because the moment you filed this forgery, you took out a $75,000 line of credit against the house. You told the bank you were the rightful owners. That's bank fraud, Mark. I tapped the report. It's all in here, the new SUV, the credit card payoffs. You didn't just steal from me, you put our parents' home at risk for your own greed. The room was utterly silent. The truth laid bare on the coffee table. Jessica looked like she was going to be sick. Mark, cornered and exposed, shot to his feet, his face contorted with rage. "I need some air," he snarled, grabbing Jessica's arm and pulling her towards the patio door. They stumbled outside, slamming the door behind them. And that's when I heard it, filtering through the glass. The sound of their laughter, sharp and desperate, as they turned their fury on the one thing they thought they still had power over, my old car. As their mocking laughter echoed from the patio, I calmly gathered my documents from the coffee table. I didn't look at my mother, who was now openly weeping, nor at my father, who just stared into the middle distance, a prisoner in his own home. I had laid the truth before them, and they had rejected it in favor of their delusions. There was nothing more to say. I turned and walked out the front door, past my reliable old car, and drove away without looking back. The family I had tried to save for so long was no longer my concern. The next morning, I didn't call a lawyer. I called the bank, the one holding the primary mortgage on my parents' house, which was now approaching 90 days past due. I secured a meeting with a vice president in their real estate loan department. I walked in wearing my best suit, carrying the same briefcase from the night before. I wasn't there as a victim. I was there as an investor with a solution. I laid out the story for him, not with emotion, but with the cold, hard facts of a balance sheet. I presented my file, the original deed with my name on it, the complete record of my 114D, 215, 60 hours in payments, the forged quitclaim deed, and finally, the public record of the 75,000 HELOC Mark had taken out. "You have a non-performing loan on your books," I stated simply. "The current occupants committed fraud to obtain the title and have no capacity to pay. You are looking at a long, expensive foreclosure process, complete with the public relations nightmare of evicting an elderly couple." The banker nodded grimly. He knew I was right. "I have a proposal," I said, leaning forward. "I am prepared to purchase the note from you. I will pay off the remaining principal balance of the mortgage in full with a single cashier's check." His eyes widened slightly. This was unheard of. Banks rarely get full, immediate payment on a loan this far into default. "You get your money immediately. Your toxic asset is removed from your books. You avoid all legal fees and foreclosure costs," I continued. "In return, you proceed with the foreclosure as planned. This action will extinguish the secondary lien, the fraudulent HELOC. The house becomes the property of the bank, which you will then sell directly to me for the price of the outstanding mortgage as per our agreement. It's clean, it's fast, and everyone who matters gets what they are owed." He looked at my files, then at me. He saw a clean exit. He saw a guaranteed profit. He didn't have to think for long. "Let's draw up the paperwork," he said, extending a hand. As I left the bank, I knew the formal notice was about to be sent. Mark and Jessica would soon be receiving a registered letter informing them that the bank was foreclosing and that they had 30 days to vacate the property. The house they stole was about to be legally ripped from their grasp. The official foreclosure notice hit their mailbox like a bomb. 2 days later, my office door burst open. It was Mark and Jessica, their faces pale with panic and fury. Mark slammed the crumpled registered letter down on my desk. "You did this!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "You're throwing your own family out on the street! Where are Mom and Dad supposed to go? How could you be such a monster?" Jessica chimed in, tears of rage in her eyes. "We were trying to hold this family together. We took them in, and you, in your pathetic little life, decided to destroy everything out of jealousy." I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I simply looked at them, my expression unreadable. "I didn't do this," I said, my voice cutting through their hysteria. "You did. You did this when you decided my life savings were your personal emergency fund. You did this when you forged my name on a legal document. You did this when you took out a $75,000 loan to buy a new car while claiming to be a devoted caregiver. And you sealed your fate when you stood on that driveway laughing, thinking I was a failure." "A failure?" Jessica sneered, gesturing around my modest office. "Look at you. You're a glorified bookkeeper living a boring, lonely life. You have nothing. A small, cold smile touched my lips for the first time. This boring office? It's the headquarters of my firm, which owns this entire building. My lonely life is one free of debt and deception. And the cashier's check I used to buy the house you were just evicted from? It came from the interest I earned last quarter. The color drained from their faces. The reality of their miscalculation hit them with the force of a physical blow. I stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. The house is now legally mine. The locks will be changed on Friday at noon. A moving company, which I have paid for, will arrive tomorrow to transport Mom and Dad's things to their new residence. I have already paid the deposit on a suite for them at the finest assisted living facility in the state. They will be safe, comfortable, and well cared for. You, however, will not be on the approved visitor list. They stared at me, horrified. I saved the best for last. As for the two of you, I said, picking up the foreclosure notice and handing it back to them. The bank's action wiped out the junior lien on the house, but it did not wipe out your personal debt. The bank that gave you the $75,000 will now come for you. With no house as collateral, they will sue you. They will garnish your wages. They will liquidate any assets you have. You built a life on an illusion, and the bill has just come due. I walked to the door and held it open. Now please leave my office. You have a lot to pack. They stumbled out, completely broken, the weight of their new reality crushing them. Their arrogance was gone, replaced by the sheer terror of consequence. As I closed the door, I felt no joy, no rage, only the quiet, satisfying peace of a debt finally and fully paid.